I'm, as it says, Belinda Sharp, and I'm the Organisational Development Specialist with Barnardos. For those of you that don't know Barnardos in New Zealand, and I'm kind of hoping that there's nobody in the room who doesn't know Barnardos in New Zealand, we have two arms of our service. We offer an early childhood education service that's open to anybody, and that's our kind of social enterprise. And we offer social services to vulnerable children and families right across New Zealand. We've got around 750 staff, and we're spread across 64 offices or locations across New Zealand. So from Invercargill up to Whangarei is our spread. So all the usual issues that everyone has when they're thinking about how do we get learning out to these people or to our staff. But for us, budget is key. And so when I was asked to speak about implementing Totara on a budget, I took that to understand that to be a very small budget. That's me. One of my colleagues pointed out, that's actually a $100 bill, Belinda. That's big money as far as we're concerned. But first, I just want to take you on back about 20 years. In 1997, I started working in learning and development at the University of Huddersfield. Nobody else here, okay. And at that time, online learning was virtually unheard of. In fact, we'd only just got to grips with the internet. I can remember our excitement at finding search engines that actually you didn't have to type in the whole URL into the internet page. So we were quite progressive, however, in Huddersfield, and we had implemented a very early version of a learning management system 20 years ago. It was called Registrar. And no one else could touch it. Just me and the two administrators that I worked with. We weren't going to have people, booking themselves onto systems. They were going to write on that piece of paper, send it to us, and we would input it into the system for them. That's how it worked back in those days. And we used it to administer all our training programs. And it cost at the time, and I've checked this out with my administrator who still works there, it cost us at the time £15,000. That's around about $27,000. Moving on several years, and in 2011 I implemented a version of Totara in a large New Zealand government department. They're in the room, so. And that implementation had a very large project team. It had lots of technical people. We had analysts, we had risk managers, we had testers, we had instructional designers, we had a dedicated project manager from the IT space, and the final bill for that implementation was somewhere in excess of $500,000. So coming back to where I am now, at Barnardos, it's kind of taken me full circle, because what I have now is a very fashionably retro style budget, something like the one I had 20 years ago, with some rather grand expectations that they want something like the $500,000 one that they've seen. So what are we doing, and how are we trying to get this thing in place with those very tight constraints? As I said, my job's Organisational Development Specialist, so LMS is just a little something that I do on the side, along with the rest of the project team. So the first thing I did was find some friends. I needed friends. Con earlier called it a personal learning network. I just called it friends. So it was really important for me to reacquaint myself with the learning and development and the Totara space. And I'd been out of it for about 4 or 5 years, so I knew that things were changing, and it was really important for me to connect with people who were actually doing this work. So I got hooked back into the government user group, which is, I know we're not government, but we do have some government-funded contracts, so they were very kind and let me back in. Got on the phone to old friends and found out what was going on in the space, and that was really useful for me in terms of thinking whether or not Totara was where we wanted to go, and I also needed to. I came to understand that the less budget you've got, the more you've got to know about what's going on under the bonnet. And I needed to find people who could help me lift the bonnet and poke around inside, because I didn't want the sales pitch, I didn't want the glossy, big car. I wanted to know what was going on under there, because we didn't have the money to pay for someone to do that under there. So that was really useful getting into the system and getting into the networks. I also wanted to find out how we'd moved on with Totara. So in previous incarnations, things like the learning plans were there, but I've not seen the appraisal side of things. And that was something that we needed at Barnardos. Our last appraisal system had fallen over somewhere, and no one was able to revive it. So we needed something to replace that as well. So it's a big ask. We weren't just looking at the learning side of things. Our management wanted the full package, really. And I know that this kind of approach in terms of finding out who was out there and what was going on really helped me to sell Totara to our management team. I took one or two of our people out and about and showed them a few other systems, and I think Austin came in and did his usual sales to my people. I blame him. And so it really helped us. So finding friends was the first thing that I did. Friends outside my organisation. Get hooked into the networks. It's really important. The next thing I had to do then, because as I say, I work part-time, I'm the organisational development specialist, I do lots of other things, so I had to find some more friends. And these were friends actually inside our organisation. And so we don't have any dedicated instructional designers or anything like that. We don't have any dedicated L&D people. You're looking at her, she's here. So it really was about finding people who had an interest in learning and development, who had a need for a learning management system, and spending a little bit of time with them showcasing how using the system might help them solve their problem. So we have a team of what we call practice advisors. They work with our teachers out in our early learning centres and our home-based networks, and very quickly they could see that this would be a great benefit to them. So I lured them in. I used cake occasionally. That got a few of them on board. But it really was finding out who those people were in our organisation for whom this was going to be a benefit, and then pull them into our what's now our project team. And once I'd kind of lured them in, I very quickly assigned them all roles, so they knew what their role was in the project, in our Totara project. And my role since doing that has really been about keeping them engaged, keeping them informed, and keeping them on track with the work that we needed to do. I think in some cases I've created a few monsters. One of our subject matter experts, she works on the social work side of the business, got so excited she went off and did an online course in learning e-learning design. She got very excited, and then when she'd finished the course, it was one that you could then pay for the certificate. She finished the course. She came back. She demanded her manager pay for the certificate because she now really liked learning design, and she wanted to prove to other people that she could do it. So and that's from someone who, when we started this project, she had to write down the words instructional designer because she said she didn't know such a thing existed. So that was, finding friends within the organisation. Oh, the other thing then I did is I introduced my friends from inside the organisation to some of my friends outside the organisation, and that's been really great as well for showing them what the possibilities could be. Because what we're talking about here is people who have never worked with a learning management system. Most of them not worked in big government departments, never seen anything like this before. The next thing I'd say is have a plan, but not much of one. So we ran very loose in the first instance. And I know it's not something you can do everywhere. But my experience of IT projects, and this is my sixth skirmish with an LMS, is that IT projects never go to plan. In the middle of your carefully laid plans, there's always some hideous, unforeseeable impediment that's going to take your plan completely off the rails. It happens every time. I don't know why we're surprised by it, but it happens every time. So my approach was very much keep the planning light, and save your energy for doing the things that need to be done. Save your energy for doing the do. Because the planning's going to go off the rails anyway, so why waste your time, So this was my plan that I put to our steering committee. 7 points. Point 7 I'm particularly proud of. Further steps to be defined as the project progresses. Begin implementation, point 6. So all we do now is we're up to point 7, basically. We just basically have a running to-do list that just keeps getting added to, and we use that as our project meeting agenda, just to keep us on track, and we just add as things come up. Seems to be working. We're not launched yet, so I'll let you know if that agile plan actually works. The other thing that I've learned over the years is do some consultation, but actually not very much. I know it's a bit controversial, and we want everybody to be on board with everything. But when you've got a very small project team, and when you've got to spend your energies wisely, consultation can be a really big sapper of time and energy. When we did the big implementation back in 2011, one of the things we did was, we need to get our course categories correct. Got to make sure that all the courses, people will understand where to go to find the course and which courses go in which bit. And so I'm seeing nods and smiles around the room. So we spent weeks, literally, we'll have workshops, we'll have focus groups, we had post-it notes, we had big flip charts all over the walls. We had one room just covered in categories, and we got people in to do all the sorting. And after what seemed like forever, we kind of came to the amazing discovery was that everybody had a slightly different take on what categories should be called and what courses should sit in those categories. The lesson for me is just make a decision. They won't care. You're going to upset someone irrespective of whether you spent 4 months consulting with them or 2 minutes. So with this latest one, I just said to 2 of the project team, go off, have a think about it, tell me what you want. About a day later, they came back, what do you think about this? We ran it past the rest of the project team. Sweet, we're done. It's in there. And if in 6 months' time we don't like it, we'll just change it. And that's the other lesson I've learned from a colleague that I worked with at Justice was, it's never going to be 100% right. So just go with it. Work on that 80-20 rule. Just go with it and just change it. And I think that's been a big lesson for me, because that's the way things are these days. You know, you download the latest app, 2 days later they tell you they're updating it with some new functionality. Que sera, that's what we all understand. So that's, you know, I say, stay away from the consultation. It takes a lot of time. Yeah, and what we're looking at in terms of when we launch initially is going to be about going out to specific groups of people with specific courses and asking them about those courses. We're not going to ask them if they, you know, it's a bit like a sweet shop. We're not going to ask them if they like the colour of the sweet shop. We're going to give them a Mars bar and say, do you like this and do you want some more? The answer will probably be yes. As you can see, I get to run pretty free in Barnardos. My other piece of advice, of course, and it's been said several times, is just find free stuff. And there's loads of it out there. The trick is to find the good free stuff. But there's a wealth of advice, and as I've said earlier, being hooked into this these kind of networks is great. Plus all the online the Totara community boards and things like that. Just get in there, ask the questions. That's been really useful for me, particularly not having other people within our organisation at a stage where we could have certain discussions. Free information on how to do Totara. So I've sat through those hour-long courses on how to do Totara just to get that last 20 seconds of learning out of it, because that's the bit I wanted to know how to do. But it's all been good fun, and courses on some really great courses. We use FutureLearn. I don't know whether any of you have come across FutureLearn. It's from the UK. They do some really great courses, and so now we're looking at how we can take that free content, because as I said, we don't have content creators or instructional designers in Barnardos, but we're looking at how we can take that content and how we can use that content. We've been experimenting with wrapping things like action learning around training courses, online training courses, to get that social element for people, and also to keep them on track with the learning as well. So we're trying out a few different things, and I think Andrew's nodding at me. I don't know whether he's just agreeing or telling me to wind it up. Wind it up. And agreeing, I'm assuming, yeah. And so where have we got to? Well, this is kind of what our quite vanilla site looks like. But we're quite happy with that. You know, we didn't want too much fancy. It's got a few stock photos in. We're still waiting for our comms people to come back to me with our own photos. But we kind of quite like the clean look. And yeah, we've got a few bits to sort out yet. But I feel we've got something we can show our people. And when I show them that, you wouldn't believe how excited they get just by that picture. It's fabulous. Yes, it is. Thank you. There's nothing in the back end, but it's lovely on the front. So that's where we're up to. We hope to launch in July this year, and hopefully I'll keep some of you posted. Thank you.